Back. It's good to see ya. I am the late fire starter, and it's Saturday, which means a real estate video. And so I'm going to talk about how I got scammed by a guy who was not very smart. even though usually I figure out scams pretty quick. But hopefully you'll learn from my lessons of how not to get scammed. So basically, I will give you the whole thing. But before I do, let me just tell you what FIRE stands for real quick, which is Financial Independence, Retire Early. I'm a late fire starter because I started later in life. And so I don't have all this time to compound interest. I don't have all this time to build up my wealth. I haven't had a high-paying job most of my life. I went into ministry. I went into helping people. I went into nonprofit work. So I'm hacking my way through it through dividend investing and real estate investing. And because I've never had a huge salary, and because of these debt-to-income ratios when it comes to qualifying for loans, it would be harder for me to invest in high-priced areas. I live in Los Angeles, and for me to qualify for a rental property, I would have to make a lot more money than I do. So I either need to find partners, or I need to save up enough money to put down a large enough down payment, like huge, to go ahead and get that payment down to qualify for the loan. There's other things you could do, but it gets tricky. I wanted to get to financial independence through passive income, through collecting dividends to pay my bills, collecting rents to pay my bills, and living off that money. And I wanted to continue to increase. The other thing I really liked about rental income was that rents go up with inflation. And so I'm protected against inflation. So if I can live off $4,000 a month in rent profits after all my costs and expenses, if I can do that now, but 10 years from now, I need, say, $5,000, chances are rents have kept up with my need of inflationary costs. So that's one thing I also really like. The other thing I really like about real estate is that you have these assets that you can sell that are hopefully appreciating and gaining value over time. There's a saying in real estate, you make your money when you buy. What people mean by that is you want to buy below market value. And so if you buy a $350,000 valued house at $320,000, you immediately made $30,000 in net worth. You don't actually have that $30,000, but that house is worth $30,000 more than you paid for it. Therefore, you have $30,000 equity in your house, $30,000 of net worth just added to your overall net worth. So that's what people mean by that. And that's why everybody stresses buy below market value. That's much easier said than done. This very bit of advice is what a lot of the scammers really rely on. They rely on two things in particular that targeted me. One, those people who are looking for cash flow but lower entry costs. In other words, if I couldn't qualify for a $600,000 loan, maybe I could qualify for a $100,000 loan or a $75,000 loan or a $50,000 loan. So I'm looking for cheaper houses. That cash flow. I'm looking for off-market deals to get a better deal. Basically, that's why they're called deals. I'm looking to make money off the buy. There are people who wholesale houses. Wholesaling is not in itself a bad thing, although I do think that one, wholesalers are promised a sale of goods a lot of times, and I have another video about that you can check here. But two, I also think that wholesalers prey on people to overcharge them for properties. What a wholesaler will do real quick is they will go and find somebody who wants to sell quick for whatever reason. Maybe their situation changed. Maybe there was an unfortunate thing in the family. Maybe something's happening. Whatever the case is, these wholesalers, they're waiting for someone who needs to get out now. Maybe the house that someone's trying to sell is in horrible, horrible shape, and so no bank will lend on it. And so they need to sell to a cash buyer. And so a wholesaler will go and look and find these houses. They're looking for people who need cash because nobody can finance that sale, or they're looking for people who are desperate to get out and just don't want to clean, don't want to paint, don't want to do anything. So what these wholesalers will do is they will agree on a contract. So let's say this house, if it was fixed up, if it was in good shape, let's say it was worth $100,000, a wholesaler will look at it and say, hey, your house needs a lot of work, it's in really bad shape, I will give you $60,000. What the wholesaler will then do is take this $60,000 contract and sell it to an investor for $80,000. What they're hoping to do is to make $20,000, $10,000, $5,000. It just depends on the transaction. If they're getting this place for $60,000, chances are it's worth $60,000. Most wholesalers who offer me houses, when I do the math on it, it's a losing proposition. In other words, I'm going to do better buying off the MLS, buying off the normal listings through an agent. I'm going to do much better doing it that way than I am with most of the wholesalers that I've come across, because the wholesalers are just trying to make a profit, and they end up just buying crap and then selling you crap at an overcharged price. Here's what happened with me. I was researching different markets where I could buy low and have good cash flow. I then went onto a website called Bigger Pockets. I found Bigger Pockets through searching and doing my research through this. And I went on Bigger Pockets, and there's message boards there. And so you can go ahead and look in the message boards for different even cities or areas or states of people that are investing. Most of the investments that I saw that had good cash flow areas were in the Midwest. So I was looking at Indianapolis, Memphis, Cleveland, a lot of the big name places that target wholesalers, that target out-of-state investors that do this sort of thing because of the cash flow potential. In other words, you're buying a place and the amount of rent you're collecting ends up cash flowing way more than if you did it in a higher end place where maybe you cash flow zero in a place in LA, or maybe you're even negative cash flow, whereas in a place like Cleveland, you might be able to cash flow $800 from the get-go every month. This is what's happening. I'm researching this area. What I'm doing is I'm also commenting on these message boards, reading these message boards, calling people. I'm reaching out to individuals. So I talked to somebody in Akron, I think. I talked to somebody in Indianapolis. I reached out to people and I talked to them on the phone. But for whatever reason, Cleveland had way more response to my endeavors. So I would call people and I would have longer conversations with people in Cleveland. I felt like I was getting more information. It was just easier to get information on Cleveland. There's some big real estate agents who have YouTube channels. There's just a lot of activity for out-of-state investors in Cleveland. And so because of this, I had a great track to different people who were investing in Cleveland, who were in Cleveland, who were on the grounds in Cleveland. Well, there was one guy in particular that I had a conversation with on the phone who had written a lot in the message boards. And a lot of what he said created this narrative that he'd been investing in Cleveland for many, many years. And when I spoke to him, he said he wasn't a wholesaler, he wasn't anything. He said he was an investor. And he ended up answering my questions, and we had a great conversation. And I thought, okay, this guy seems legit. He ends up texting me saying he'd love to get me started, and he offers me this single family house in a part of Cleveland, and I go on Google Maps and I look at everything and I look at the comps, and to me, it was a bad deal. It was a really bad deal, and I was like, no, I'm going to pass. In the meantime, I had been researching different areas of Cleveland and different neighborhoods, and I had narrowed down on definitely west side of Cleveland, which is what most investors had focused on and which most of the advice I was given. I guess even East Cleveland had been a mess, and it was just too hard to figure out for out-of-state investors which block was not going to, result in somebody stealing your water heaters or, just destroying your house, burning it down, whatever. Which block was going to have just horrible things happen, and then which block might be decent. So you could get crazy deals. You could buy houses for $10,000 in East Cleveland, but it was just the risk factor of, well, what am I getting? Am I getting a crack house? I mean, what is going to happen there? Is there going to be squatters? Is it just going to be costing me $2,000 a month because of all the damage that's done? I mean, there's just too many factors there. And so West Cleveland seemed to be a little more calm. Even on West Cleveland, though, there were different neighborhoods. There were some up-and-coming neighborhoods that were already too pricey for what I was looking for. There were some other neighborhoods that were really pricey and desirable to live. And then there were some areas that were maybe a little too lower end for my liking. And then there was this little area called Old Brooklyn, which was right in between. really what real estate investors use as a grading scale, A, B, C, D, E, F, basically. And so I was looking for a solid C. But C is such a wide range. You have some C's that have bars on the windows and other C's where there's no need for bars on the windows. There's just a lot of variance. And what I really liked about Old Brooklyn was the price points were low, the rents were good, and the area was not great, but it's not a danger war zone, and it seemed like a good place for me to buy. So I was really narrowing in, and I said, all right, I'm sure there's plenty of other good places to invest in Cleveland, maybe even better places, but I feel good about Old Brooklyn. I'm going to be looking in that area. So I was looking on the MLS. I was looking for different things. I got on some mailing lists with some wholesalers or real estate agents, and I got my first duplex. And I did it through a real estate agent, actually one of the bigger real estate agents, the guy who I said has his YouTube channel. I went ahead and purchased this duplex. I inherited the tenants. They're still in there. It's been 4 years, and they've paid every month. And so that's been great. I have a mortgage on there and everything. Since that went pretty well, I was continuing to look for properties. I was getting to know the Old Brooklyn area. And so when you really start looking and making offers in a particular neighborhood, you get to know that neighborhood. You get to know what are the prices, how are the comps, what is the inventory like, what are the blocks like, which part of this neighborhood is better than the other, how are things selling. And so I really got to know this area. Well, all of a sudden, the guy that I originally talked to that offered me that bad deal, he ends up coming through with a duplex in the neighborhood that I like, Old Brooklyn. It was a killer deal. I really wanted. I made an offer. We signed a purchase agreement. It was good. It was good to go. Well, all of a sudden, time passes, a few weeks, and I reach out and I say, what's going on with this place? I want to move forward with it. Tell me what's the deal? And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, we're working on it. It's still good. And he said he was selling it on behalf of his father who needed the money and everything. So anyways, he always had a story behind everything. So he tells me, all right, we got this place. It's good. It's yours. It's at this price. But I think the price we agreed to was $60,000. I knew that this particular duplex, that was a great deal. That was a good value at that time. I had agreed at $60,000. No action happens. I'm still waiting. We're reaching out. He's always got a story. All of a sudden, that real estate agent that I bought the first duplex from, his email comes through with new listings. And guess which property is on his email? It's the one that I have a purchase agreement with this other guy for. I reach out to this guy and I say, what's going on? Why is this real estate agent trying to sell the house that you already sold to me? What is happening? He gives me this whole story about how his father had already signed a contract with this real estate agent and how this real estate agent wouldn't let him out of this contract, and he made this whole story up. Long story short, I saw that this real estate agent was trying to sell the same property for $75,000. And I believe what it ended up selling for was $71,000. So really, this scam artist who had given me a purchase agreement to buy this duplex for $60,000, a real estate agent just sold the same exact duplex for $71,000. He kept offering duplexes for below market value. I knew that he was a liar. I knew that he made up stories that just didn't work. I knew that he was not completely legit. But I also got the sense that he was offering me better deals than anyone could. He got lucky. The fact that he was trying to sell me this duplex, and then whoever he was selling it for, because he worked with different investors, whoever he was selling it for ended up selling it through a real estate agent for more money, and I just happened to be on the mailing list. So there was a series of events that validated this guy's pricing to me based on all these other outside factors that he had no control over. Now, I've thought about it and talked to other people since, and all of us agree who know this guy that he's not smart enough to pull off this sort of operation. In other words, part of me thought, I wonder if what he does with new clients, with new potential victims, if you will, is if he goes and he looks on the MLS, he finds a property that is listed or that is newly listed, reaches out, says, hey, let's sign a Part of me wonders if what he does with new victims then is He goes on the MLS, he finds new listings, brand new listings, like the day of, and then he texts them like he did me, and he says, hey, I got this great place, and he offers it for a really good price. Then what he's hoping is that you discover that all of a sudden it's listed by someone else, you reach out, and he's got the story ready, and then he lets you watch it sell for 10 to 15 to 20,000 more than you had agreed to buy it from him, thus sucking you into his lair. I don't think he's that sophisticated. In fact, I know he's not. I think he got really lucky and I got very unlucky. After that, my trust level went up a little bit. I was still skeptical. I knew this guy was full of crap, but I also knew that he had potential to get me really good deals. As a result, the next 4 properties I bought were through him. He also started managing my properties. He did have tenants in these places, but when I flew out there and inspected them, they were not livable. I had become a slumlord, and that was not my intention. He had been renting to desperate people and then using that rent to pay my rent, but making up charges and charging me other elements. Also, where he really made his money was selling me these properties. So on behalf of his other investors, he would sell these duplexes that were in shambles. They were horrible shape, unlivable, literally needing tons of work. He would sell them for $35,000 and then sell them to me for $45,000, and he would pocket the $10,000. And so he was doing this. And when I asked him how much he's making off each deal, he would say $1,000 or he'd say nothing. And so he lied. Eventually, I got loose from this guy, but he had some of my money, and so I had to stay nice. I had to play nice with him for way too long, much longer than I did. But I also knew he was really, really, really scared of lawyers. He would come at you. He would go between trying to charm you or trying to BS you with a story to trying to threaten you. He would go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But I knew the one thing that he was really, really worried about was legal stuff. And so I ended up getting a lawyer, and through this lawyer contacting him, long story short, he ends up leaving Cleveland. He's in Florida now, and I've had to spend a lot of money fixing up these houses. So that house that I bought for $45,000, I've had to put $50,000 into it just to make it what it should be. And right now, it might be worth $90,000. But in other words, I've had to put more money into it than I even bought it for. And the after repair value, the ARV, like if I was flipping it, is about or less than what I'm all in for. So as you can see, these were bad deals. I'm still recovering from it. I'm still having to pay repair costs. I'm still, down money in Cleveland after 3 years and all this legal stuff. I did get some money back. He took back some of the really crappy properties. He took back another one. He didn't pay. He paid for like 3 months of what he owed me. And then I took back one of the properties. So it's a long saga and it's not over yet. I'm almost out of the clear. I'm done pouring these money pits. Well, every time I think I'm done, something happens. That's how I got scammed. It was really looking for great deals, and it was finding a guy who was a professional scammer who relied on victims of out-of-state investors who were looking for below-market deals and who were looking for cash flow. He used those two things to make the numbers look incredible, and he happened to get lucky because of this timing with this one duplex. Whether that's by design or not, I do not know. But I do know this. I will never, ever, ever buy a place sight unseen again without a third-party inspection, without having someone else involved who's also a third party. In other words, what I mean is I want a third-party inspection and a real estate agent involved in any out-of-sight seen places that I'm purchasing from another person, because not doing that did save me money, but then it cost me money and I got scammed. And honestly, it was very embarrassing. Generally, I'm a pretty smart guy. It was really embarrassing to get super duped by a guy who's just not so smart. And I felt really, really dumb. Unfortunately, this happens a lot. It happens a ton in places like Cleveland, in Indianapolis, in places like Memphis, in these markets that really target out-of-state investors, the numbers look great. And the potential is there. There are way more bad actors trying to get your money than good, honest ones. So just be careful and do your due diligence.